Okay, so just a real quick recap. We started into this last week. We had talked about socialism being kind of that overarching, big picture government involvement. If you look at a lot of stuff that's coming down the pike right now, government wise, there's a lot of a push towards socialized systems. So the more you see government involvement in anything, that's more socialism. Right? So the more you run into a system where they go, we're going to get out of your way, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, you tend to see more market systems where the market decides. When you see more government stepping in, keep in mind, if we were to legalize, this is something that comes up from time to time, if we legalized marijuana and we created laws for that to kind of mandate who can do this, who cannot, ages, how many plants, yada, 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 all of that is more government. So even if we were to legalize it, you're adding more government to the process, right? Because you're adding more rules and regulations and all those different things. So the more government you see, the more socialism you tend to see in there as well. The other thing about socialism too is there tends to be an equality aspect that you run into. Everyone should be getting the same amount of money. Everyone should have the same amount of this. Everyone should have the same amount. So they talk about the fairness aspect, which does anybody have Mrs. Lolly by any chance? She told you guys she hates the F word. It's not the F word you're thinking of. The F word she hates is fair, because nothing is fair. Like everyone has different accommodations, right? So some of you, does anybody here a visual learner? Like I can see it. If I watch it one time or two times, I can pick it up. That's one. Who in here has to do it to learn it? So you can be two as well. So you can be visual. Like for me, if I'm like for I stunts, like cheerleading, all that stuff. If I watch it on a video, and I'm like, okay, but then I have to put my hands on and try to flip it, and that didn't work. Okay, try. Okay, that's it. Then.
What, an actual person?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you put like a mat down and make sure that they're safe. But I'm very tactile. Anybody here can like listen and just pick it up while they're listening to something?
For like music, I can do that.
Right. So there's different variations. When you talk about fair, sometimes we don't take that into consideration. Right? It's different for everyone. That was actually the conversation that was had when Trump and Biden had their debate. Again, whether you like them or not doesn't really matter. The point that I'm getting to is in their debate, we're talking about $15 across the board minimum wage for the government, for everyone. And Biden was all for it, very, very on the side of socialized system. Like, yes, everyone gets $15. Trump was like, yeah, but $15 in California is different than $15 in Arkansas. They're two different states. Arkansas has a lot lower wages. They don't need the $15, whereas California probably needs $18 or $19 an hour because of all the taxes that they have, right? So you run into that type of system regarding socialism. The other part of this, we talked about the Netherlands. And again, the biggest issue with the Netherlands was the taxation. It was almost all, and the amount. Did I talk with you guys about the amount of stuff available to you there?
Yeah.
Right. So that was a big thing too. And my brother, before I got a chance to visit, he made the comment, the only thing that's really different if I go shopping is the sheer amount of stuff available to me. I can still get everything I get in the U.S. There's just not as much of it. So like the grocery store, yeah, there's bread, but nowhere near is it this massive section. It's just two shelves, right, or two sections. And when I visited, it was really kind of funny to see all the stuff that we have in the U.S. was the same there, but everything in the U.S. is bigger, right? So all the candy bars over there, like they have. Very rarely do you see those double ones that we have now, like the Milky Ways or the big, huge, extra size, extra large ones. And over there, you're back to the original size. Everything's the same. So the 1990s, 1980s version of the candy bars over there.
So like the ones that are like this big?
Yeah, like the originals. Yeah. So it's the same stuff. It's just smaller in times. Now, when we got to this, and we get to the Marx aspect of this one from Marx. Okay, good. So this is where you start to see the German philosopher Marx jump in, because Marx and Smith pretty much were on opposite sides of the spectrum, right? So Smith was all about free market, you guys decide, self-interest, let yourself do what you want and everyone benefits. Marx looked at it from a different perspective and said, if I'm doing that, then people are getting left out. There's an unfairness to it, and some of the hardest workers aren't getting the benefits they should be getting. So we need to switch it around and make sure that everyone is getting taken care of. Take the money from the wealthy and give it to the poor people. And in this case, it was and we're talking about the bourgeoisie, right? The leaders, the kings, the queens, the czars, all of that stuff needs to go away. Who in here has ever heard of Rasputin? Right? And Rasputin, what was the czar? Oh, come on, I can do this. Oh, I think we get to it, but there was the king and queen of Russia prior to Lenin taking over. Right? You had the Romanov family. That was it, the Romanovs. There's a whole push to get rid of this ruling class. I don't know. We don't need those people. We need to take care of the workers, right? So this is. I'll put that back down so you guys can see your picture. Wrong one. Oh, I was right the first time. Right. So when we look at this, there is a difference between the two. Right. Both of them agree on this one. Even distribution of wealth, centralized control of economic power. That's consistent. Socialism in general tends to look at a wide range, right? We have a whole bunch of variations, more taxation or more government control, more ownership of different companies. So if you go to Canada, the healthcare system in Canada is controlled and owned by the government of Canada. Right? It is not a single payer, but it's very close to a single payer system. And what I mean by single payer is everyone gets access to it. Like there was who here has watched Ted Lasso on Apple TV? Anybody by any chance? So one of the episodes, it shows him in the hospital in England, and he's picking up a friend who's gotten a concussion. She was in a car accident, or she was on a bike and she was hit by a car. Nothing major, it wasn't tragic or anything. She just got a concussion. And he walks. It shows him standing there talking to the doctor, and he says, "So wait a second, I could be completely mangled up in a car accident. You guys get me and you fix me, and I don't pay a thing." And the woman's like, "Exactly. Everyone gets taken care of, no matter who you are. All things paid for by the government." But this is one of those lovely things, right? Yes, that's awesome, great, perfect, wonderful. Where's that money come from? Because those people still aren't working for free.
Taxes.
Right? So I just raised my taxes. My brother, I had a friend of mine who lived in England, and she said that you can. This is consistent with the Netherlands. You can get the medically provided stuff that the hospitals give you for having a baby, but you're like 3 or 4 women to a room, not birthing in the same room as everyone else, but there's 3 or 4 women in the room with you, right? So decent sized room, 4 women. They have their babies and they can stay there for I think it's like a day, and then you have to leave, depending on what kind of surgery. If it's traditional, then it's a day or 2. If it's C-section, then you have a couple more days of recovery time. But same thing as in the U.S., and here's where it kind of gets a little bit more capitalist, is you can pay more and get yourself a room with just 2 women in the room rather than the 4. If you pay a little more, you can get your own room. Right? So yes, you get the base care from the government if you pay a little extra. But anyways, this one tends to be the more reasonable one in regards to what we typically see on a daily basis. Communism, we run into a lot more government mandates, right? So if you guys remember right at the beginning of the whole shutdown, did anybody see any videos from China when they were dealing with their COVID issues?
Like the color?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
So the country of China, when the first news started getting reported, I remember watching videos of it and was like, wow, there's a difference between China and the United States. Because lots of people are like, oh, China's fine. It's okay. Yes, there's a lot of free market stuff there, and they're kind of moving that way. However, they were literally rounding people up and physically putting them into vans. And this is people that were fully masked, government officials, putting them and taking them to locations and not vaccinating, but at the time it was isolating. So you had no choice. Or they were literally closing the doors of houses and apartment complexes. You're not allowed to leave. We're physically going to be going up and down the streets and making you stay in your houses. Right? So that's again a communist type situation. Does anybody remember by any chance the video, if you saw it in history class, of the young guy in front of the tank at Tiananmen Square?
Yeah.
Right. So that was back in it was 80s. and it was when Reagan was president. But I remember watching this, and what had happened in China was they allowed their history classes at their colleges to teach Western history, so the U.S. and our history. And they had talked about the revolution. Up to that point, they hadn't really been taught that stuff. They'd only been taught certain things that the government allowed. So they allowed for U.S. history to be taught, or Western civilization. And the kids were like, the college age kids were all about, we can have a revolution, a revolt.
Mm-hmm.
We can try to over. So all of a sudden, Tiananmen Square, they had this big, huge, massive grouping of college age students that got together to fight for liberties. They were trying to make their own revolution start. And one of the videos is, for those who haven't seen it, is a college age guy, and he has bags in his hands. Let me just show it to you guys. It's on YouTube.
Wait, don't do it.
Okay, but what he does is he's protesting the government's takeout. So they were all on Tiananmen Square, which is their large downtown. I can't remember their capital, and the military came in to break up this big, huge protest, and this tank came rolling in, and they were trying to move, and so the guy was standing there with two bags. I remember that part. He was had two bags, and the tank comes up to him, and it starts to like pivot like a tank would, slow, and he moves over. He gets in front of the tank again, and he moves over, and he gets in front of the tank again, and then inevitably he is tackled and taken away by a group of people. And I read an article about that guy a couple years ago. I was looking up just because of this conversation, and he was never seen from again. He disappeared. They don't know if he was executed. They don't know if he's in prison, but he hasn't. Families asked questions left and right. Nope, nothing. So again, you're dealing with a communist state. That's the results.
He's getting ready to play a video. So
1989.
1989, and you remember the video? How old were you?
I was.
Let's just say I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So this is Tiananmen Square. This is massively huge. And here's the guy down the bottom left. I still remember the two bags. I'm not sure why. It's almost like he was on his way to go shopping, and it was basically like one man can stop the government of China is amazing. Now it gets a little more intense. Yeah, so and what you don't see is him being taken away. But that was, I was 9. So I was 15. What's that?
Isn't China now removing all the memorials
Mhm.
in Times Square?
Yep.
Why?
Because they can.
It was-
China, they can do what they want
shows
to.
that the people stood up for them.
Yep. They don't want people to have that. You don't want people to fight against you if you're in a communist situation. You just do what we say. All right. So for this one, and this is actually where I was going to talk about the Bolshevik Revolution. This is kind of the history of Russia in a brief synopsis. And what's interesting about this is I've talked with some people that have lived in this. My sister-in-law, one, I mean, a friend of mine, an acquaintance that used to work here. Her husband he lived in communist Poland, and some of the stories he had was absolutely amazing. But if we look back at the history, 1917, this was the whole murder of the Tsar family. Do you guys remember any of the stories about them being the Romanov family being executed? So one of the sad but interesting stories was the Bolsheviks, which was the working class. That was Lenin, and all the workers rose up against the Mensheviks, which was the leaders, and basically overtook them and killed them all, and killed them on purpose because they didn't want their families to be able to come back eventually and say, well, I'm the heir of the Romanov family. Has anybody ever heard of Anastasia? There was a cartoon a couple years years
the
ago.
princess?
Oh yeah.
Princess Anastasia. She was supposedly a Romanov, and that was the fear, was that the Romanov family would take back over eventually. So they wanted to kill the whole family to get rid of the family line. Anyways, one of the stories was that the Bolsheviks, the military, found the Romanov family in one of their palaces and lined them up in the basements, and with machine guns just mowed them all down and killed them. All the men stepped in front of their wives and kids and were killed right away. And the women and the children, however, were relatively resilient. They actually had to go up to the women and children and shoot them in the heads to kill them, because what they didn't know was that the family had sewn and put all over them all their literal family jewels, all over themselves. So they became like mock bulletproof vests. So when they were shooting them, the kids and the women were surviving, and they were like, what's going on? Because they had protected their chests from all the bullets. But yeah, so anyways, all of that led to this communist state. You had the Lenin, and then Stalin, right? All of those people led through the 1920s all the way through the 1990s. And the thing about them is, in a communist state, you do what they say, right? This is how we do this. We're going to take money from you guys and give it to these guys. So when we had the space race, looking at this stuff right here, one of the big issues that we ran into, or they ran into, was, well, then everyone's going to not have as much food, and we're not going to have as much royal eccentricities for you, the people, because we're taking all that extra money and we're putting it into the space program. Because we only have a certain amount of money, we only have a certain amount of resources, so you guys get the crap. We take all the good stuff and give it to the space group, because they need to make sure that they're taken care of. Because we got to beat the U.S. And that was it. So that was the big thing. I remember talking to my sister-in-law, and she said when they got shoes, and she was in the 80s, was when she was born and raised in Russia. She got one pair of shoes for the year.
For the year?
For the year. And if it didn't fit quite right and you grew, like, she had an older sister, so she said she was lucky because her older sister had bigger shoes because her sister was 2 years older than her. She could go into her sister's old shoes, but no new shoes. So when she moved out, I showed you guys the guy from North Korea talk about chicken being his thing of freedom.
No.
Right? When he thinks about freedom, I didn't show you guys that video. I'll show you guys, not today, but some other time. He was interviewed, and he was talking about how he was able to be free, and he was able to get any type of chicken he wanted to. And the interviewer, Anderson Cooper, said, I've never heard someone compare freedom to chicken. And then the guy responded with, yeah, but think about how much chicken you guys have. Like, think about how many types of chicken
Teachers,
you guys
please
eat.
excuse the interruption. At this time, will all Brunswick seniors please report to the South Mall area to have their pictures taken for the yearbook. Thank you.
You're fine. For Brunswick?
Yes, this morning.
Okay, then you're good.
The ones-
You're already taken. Yeah. So that's the idea. But when I talk to my sister-in-law, when I talk about, like, what's the one thing that you think of that's like future, shoes. So when you go to her closet, she's got like tons of shoes, because when she was little, there was only one pair of shoes. That was it. All she got for a year. Now I can buy as many shoes as I want. Heck yeah, I'm buying as many shoes as I can. So the big thing that you find with these guys, the weakness of the economy, was that it was a give and take. There was never like more wealth and more wealth and more wealth and more wealth. It was the government's going, okay, we're going to take from you guys and give it to you. We're going to take from you guys and give it to you. Very, very limiting. The other one, the guy that I told you I knew from Poland, communist Poland, one of the stories he told me was watermelons. And I was like, what do you mean by watermelons? He said, well, my mom worked for the governor, and they have our mayor there over there in Poland was governor of their city, was having a big, having a delivery of watermelons. But because his mom worked for the governor, they were given a second voucher for a second watermelon. So what happened was, and they also knew when the delivery was coming. Everyone else would see the truck and have to run and get in line to get a watermelon. So you had a big, huge, and the way he described it was one of those farm trucks that has the big, like the wood things on the outside. I can't even remember what those are.
Just sides.
Yeah, so it's just a big, basic truck with wood sides to hold everything in, but nothing fancy. That was loaded with watermelons. And when it comes up to a certain location, you had a voucher, and you would walk up, and you would. So if you had a voucher, you get to go to the front of the line. And let's say Dominic was giving me the watermelon, I'd be like first in line because I knew it was coming at 7:00 in the morning. All right, send the two brothers out. That was him and his brother would go out. And here's a voucher, and they would get a watermelon the size of a basketball. And then the other guy, his other brother, gave him a voucher, got a watermelon the size of a basketball. But if you were at the back of the line, because he said he had a friend that was near the back of the line, got there, and all that was left was pieces of watermelon. So here's your pieces of watermelon because it was on the bottom, it was all crushed. Right? But he said that was. He's like when he thinks of communism, that's what he thinks of. And he said, and when the watermelons ran out, that was it. Even if there was 100 people left, we're out, we're done, no more. That's all you get. Right? So when you talk about, there used to be like a toilet. There was a joking about toilet paper shortages. But when I talked to my sister-in-law, she's like, no, that was real. You get a roll of toilet paper or 2 rolls of toilet paper for the week or for the month until the next delivery, or every 2 weeks, I think it was. And when you were out of toilet paper, you're out of toilet paper. So you got to figure another way to wipe your butt.
Wait, like
That's it. That's all you get.
really?
Because the government would only allot so much. Every family is allowed to. Right. Matter of fact, in Christmas, you guys are going to run into this. This again was very common. So we're nowhere near this, but you guys start to see those empty shelves, randomness, so the government trying to pick and choose. This was very, very common. Like whatever's left over, I get the leftovers. I get whatever's around. But yeah, so it was. That was what I was going to go into the socialism aspect. Christmas time, because seniors, you guys didn't get this last year either, because we had to close down for that last week, right? Before we had Christmas, we do the pizza thing. So we do a big pizza party, and we have a little band that comes in and plays for you guys Christmas music during lunch. It's kind of cute. And then the teachers all line up and we serve you pizza, but you only get 2 pizzas. And you get a Coke or a Pepsi product can and a cookie. And it's a socialized setup. Like everyone gets 2. Here's your 2 pieces. Now you have a choice of pepperoni, sausage, plain, or pepperoni. Pepperoni, sausage, plain. Yeah, that's
Pepperoni sausage, plain, or pepperoni.
They actually do double up on the pepperoni. There's more pepperoni than anyways, yeah, it's very socialized. And then when you're done, you're done. That's it. That's all you get. 2. But what's funny for me, I always laugh because there's a black market that appears. People like sell their tickets, or you see people like looking for tickets on the floor, or some of the people try to hop back in line. Or this is another one, and this is I was laughing too because all of it's like perfect for like governments, bribery. I had people that were like, "Hey, Mr. Ron, let me back in line. What can I do? Give me a rock star tomorrow, or give me a monster." And like, okay, and I get them back in line and get 2 more pieces of pizza. Or if you knew the lady that was in charge of the tickets, you go up to her like, "Hey, Miss Kalina, how are you? How's your day going? Great. Do you mind if I get lunch? Yeah, go ahead." Or we got a little pizza left over, and then I would go up to people like, and I'd be like, "Hey, Jojo, there's more pizza." Right. So sweet. All those fun things, right? China, same thing, similar, right? Do you guys have a lot to write down for this one?
No, not really.
Awesome, good. Because I just wanted to kind of touch on this. But China has this fun thing that they started doing where they were trying to go pure communist, and it actually started backfiring on them. And part of it was the farming. So they were taking all the farms from the big farmers and dividing it up equally amongst all the farmers. And this is actually something, I'm not sure if it's really applied to you guys, if it's kicked in yet. With my quizzes, because I've seen this on my quizzes. There's some students that have gone, "Oh, well, if Mr. Hall is going to curve the quiz, I don't really have to try that hard. He's going to take like 2 or 3 questions off probably.
What's the first one?
No,
For ESG.
It's China 1949.
Oh.
Gotcha. So I said, I haven't seen it because the quizzes are pretty short and sweet. Most of you guys pushed through those. But there was my dad told me the story. It was a professor at a college who was teaching communism. And so what he did was, throughout the entire unit, so it was like 3 or 4 weeks long, he gave everyone the exact same grade on the quizzes. So no matter what you did, if you did perfect, you got a C. If you failed, you got a C.
That's me.
Right? So the irony was what happened to all the students by the end of the unit that were getting A's. They weren't getting A's. Like if you looked at their actual scores, they went from A's, and then they realized, oh, I'm just going to get a C, so why should I try? So they ended up getting like D's, and the people that were getting D's originally went down to like zeros out of whatever the quizzes were. So, and the point the guy was trying to make was, it doesn't matter how hard you work or how little you work, you all get taken care of. It's all the C. It's all average. Right? And that was one of those things where he was able to prove his point just in points. But yeah, so that was what they were doing with farms. They were breaking them up and giving them up to everyone. And it wasn't quite working. The farmers that were really good farmers were seeing all the bad farmers, or people that couldn't keep up, getting paid the same amount of money as they were. So I go, well, why should I try to make as much farming stuff or products if I'm still going to get paid and they're not doing anything and they're not getting paid? So their actual production went down lower and lower and lower. So then they finally were like, okay, we got to go back to the way it was. So yeah, here's your farm, here's your small farm, make as much as you can and we'll pay you based off of that. China also, you guys have heard about the one child per family thing?
Yeah.
So China has that policy. There was an interesting situation, what about in 2010, 11, somewhere around there was an avalanche in one of the cities. Anybody remember hearing about this? You guys are pretty young. And it literally wiped out a school and killed all the kids in the school. And the families had to petition the government to allow them to have another kid. Because they were only allowed one. Their kid just died in an avalanche. Can we have another kid? That would be our second kid, but their first kid was killed. So will you allow us to have another child?
Did they?
Yeah. But just that community, no one else. Some of the farmers, though, guess who their workers are for their farm?
The kid.
Their kids. So some of them, because you actually, in the U.S., you get tax credits. Like the government will be like, oh, you make $20,000 or $100,000 and you have 4 kids. All right, 4 kids times $2,000 per kid. Let's go ahead and give you that and take it off of your taxes. So we're going to give you a credit. In China, they charge you more if you have extra kids. Right? Or sometimes they'll take the kids away and put them in adoption or send them away and give them to other people. This is why you can adopt a lot of young girls in China.
That was my friend.
That's a whole other situation because in China, one of the problems they're running into now is because men are more valuable workers because whatever. Girls are typically more adopted. Like if you would see a Chinese adoption agency, mostly girls, right? Because the boys are more valued for working situations. So you see a higher number of girls being adopted. But now the number of boys, there was one city in China, it was the ratio, ladies, this would be perfect for you if you're the Chinese guys, 1 to 100. 1 girl for every 100 guys. And so they literally had to import women to the town. Like, we need people to volunteer to come to this place.
And China also like force you to marry people.
They could, they can.
I heard there was like, cause like China had like one of the tallest guys, and like they forced him to marry the tallest
Well,
women's
so they
basket
could breed-
player they
breed
could,
as
so
tall,
they could
yeah.
have it.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. Now the other thing what's interesting now is this video I found, Chinese knockoffs. So the one thing that they don't have in China is any copyright laws, copyright patents. Government owns everything. So they pretty much, so anything that's privately owned, like in the United States, if I were to make a McHollows and have like all the same looks of everything with the M, the golden arches, I would be sued. That's copyright infringement. Someone already copyrighted that. That's theirs. I can't use theirs. China doesn't have those laws. So they have some fun stuff regarding different versions. So enjoy this.
Copyright infringement doesn't translate terribly well into Mandarin.
You might want to grab your Stars and Bucks coffee for this one. It's going to be an interesting ride. China's copycat culture is well known, and it's no secret that they are good at replicating stuff. Some knockoffs are very good, and at first glance, you can't tell the difference. But this is not always the case, especially when it comes to well-known fast food chains. Here are 10 hilarious knockoff fast food chains in China.
Chinese are very good at this sort of thing.
MacDac.
I'll have the Big Mac, please.
China loves the taste of the West. It's new, exciting, and a special treat for them to be able to go eat Western food. Although there are many knockoff Western food chains, some of them you might be fooled at first glance. So did you think this was a McDonald's? At second glance, MacDac is clearly not McDonald's, but more like a tribute to Daffy Duck.
Idiot dope.
Perhaps the Happy Meals come with gold coins? China is excellent at replicating, and if there is a successful business they want to be part of, they make their own version replicating everything they can, from the biggest to the smallest details. McDonald's is in second place for the top grossing American fast food chains in China. Not only that, but Chinese people trust American fast food chains, so the replicas might think they can fool people by luring them in with the same look, feel, and similar tastes. How close can they get the taste to the real thing, though? Instead of McD's, you have MacDacs, whose menu includes burgers, fries, nuggets, and some kind of replica of the Big Mac. But the most important question is, were they able to get the Big Mac sauce right?
It's still a Big Mac.
KFD and KFG.
Ni hao.
Sound familiar? KFC. And what comes after C? Oh, D. KFD. Then there is KFG. And you can also find a DFC. These all just use a play on letters to imitate the well-known food chain KFC. There are so many rip-offs for this popular fast food chain because it is loved by the Chinese people and is the top-grossing fast food chain countrywide. All the versions of KFC seem to be just a variation of any combo of 3 English letters on the wall. The other knockoff Kentucky Fried Chicken outlets in China include KLC, FBC, and MFC. They all use the red and white brand colors that KFC uses and have a different sketched face to accompany the logo. Sometimes the sketch is a fat chicken, other times it's a Chinese man's face.
It's me, and I'm you.
They offer a menu that includes popcorn chicken and fries, just like the real thing, and of course, the signature dish of fried chicken. You can find a KFD or KFG all over the country.
I feel like a Kentucky Fried Idiot.
Cheeseburger.
Cheeseburger first.
Recognize this logo? Well. If it isn't the Burger King logo, but instead for a place called Cheeseburger. How can you really change this restaurant down to just one menu item? The cheeseburger.
I love this burger, so delicious.
After all, they do have a lot more on the menu than that. Perhaps the Chinese people really love cheeseburgers? Or maybe the founder really loved cheeseburgers from the real Burger King and thought about starting their own version featuring just one menu item? However you want to explain this one, this is our best guess. But the real story behind this Burger King knockoff is that fast food Western burger joints are very well liked in China. But unfortunately, they are mostly only available in big and well-known cities. So the cities in between don't get as much fast food options, and hence these rip-off versions started to pop up. They look the same, taste the same, and therefore generate quite a bit of traffic into their locations. It might not be the same quality of a real Whopper meal, but something is better than nothing. Playlist, but still. The service is much better than your local Taco Bell. This is one knockoff food chain that really did it right, and seems to have more success than the original version of Taco Bell, who didn't do so well in China. Taco Bell Grande offers a complimentary bowl of chips and salsa upon being seated, and this on its own makes it worth the visit. The founders of this knockoff were looking to find the recipe for success with Mexican food in China by making it an upscale, full-service, sit-down restaurant and providing great customer experience and great food. For the average American, Taco Bell is a place with fast food when you don't have a lot of time or want something cheap yet butt or pizza gut or even pizza tut, the Egyptian-themed Pizza Hut. Actually, that last one sounds more like something for Vegas.
Vegas, here we go!
Buckstar Coffee or Sunbucks Coffee?
Fake Starbucks over there for a cup of fake coffee.
Buckstars, Sunbucks, or USA Bucks are all nothing but a rip-off Starbucks. They really do a solid job with knocking off this world-famous coffee chain, from the logo and branding right down to the printed takeout cups and menu. The Starbucks look-alike named Buckstar Coffee has it down to the logo and branding to look very much like those of genuine Starbucks. Want to know the funny part about some of these knockoff chains, specifically Buckstars? It actually was not designed to cater to city residents, but rather to the tourists.
Large black.
Makes sense.
You mean a venti?
Yeah. So, no, I meant large. So, anybody seen that movie, Role Models?
I haven't seen it. I've seen that clip.
Yeah.
Of the movie.
So, when we look at this, there are advantages, right? So, and I know it says disadvantages, but the advantage of a command system is quick. It's fast. It's faster, right? So, it happens in classrooms all the time. At some point in time, the teacher goes, "Okay, here's what we're doing. This is it." Or if you guys are on a sports team and your coach says, "No, there's no questions. This is what we're doing. We're just doing it right now. No questions asked. Just get out there, start going." It's quicker, right? You don't have as much things getting in the way because the government just tells you what to do, right? There's no logistics issues. You'll do this, and you'll do this, and you'll do this, you'll do this. One of the things that we run into, though, is if everyone is making similar wages and you can't move up because there's no free markets drive, what's the drive for you guys to work harder? So if there's no perks, if there's no bonuses, if there's no extras, if there's no inventors' patents or copyrights, what's the incentive to do anything? You tend to just go, all right, I'll just do what I'm supposed to do and not really worry about it. The more government you get, the more issues you run into from time to time. Right? This is the one I kind of joked around about yesterday. I'm not sure if it was with you guys, but think of the post office. Right? If something goes wrong in the post office and your letter's damaged, or it's torn up, or there's issues with it, who do you complain to?
My mom.
Yeah, who's your mom complain to?
The post office.
And who's going to do anything at the post office?
I don't know.
Like, who do you go up to? It's a federal gig. Federal government. You could send letters other ways, but they're gonna be like, okay, whatever. You guys go to the DMV. Can you go to another DMV that's faster? Maybe, but it's like an hour away. You got to a different county. There's like one, maybe two per county. Like the one that we have in Medina County is in Medina. So if you live in Black River, you gotta go all the way to Medina. Right? It's bureaucracy. The more government you run into, the slower sometimes you run into these situations. Expensive. This is actually what we ran into with cigarettes. In Ohio, we had banned cigarettes, all the different secondhand smoke stuff, but that requires more laws, more tickets, more penalties. Right? So the more government you have, the more rules you have, the bigger it gets. In this situation, competition is discouraged. Right? Your choices are limited. You're only given what the government provides you. So here's your three choices. Right? This place, or this place. So there's not a ton. Disadvantages. Economic growth, there's not a ton. Right? You don't typically see that much growth. Only if the government decides to push money into that realm. If you guys owned your own company and the government was taxing it at 70%, what's the incentive to keep your business open? You can, but geez, it's a lot of money that's going out the door just in taxes. There's a current situation right now, and I'm curious to see how it's going to play out. They're looking to tax, this is in the U.S., the billionaires, which I can understand why. But one of the articles I read this morning was this new tax they're coming up with, they haven't figured out the writing or the wording of it, the specifics, the legalese of it. And one of the comments the author of the article said was, but billionaires are billionaires because they know how to manage their money. So what's going to happen when this law comes out? What are the billionaires going to do with a lot of their money?
Spend it somewhere.
They're going to put it somewhere else, someplace that the government can't get access to it. Like they'll invest in things outside of the country. Right. Now, did I bring up the IRS tapping into your bank accounts? Did we hear about this new thing? So it originally started out in the new tax plan, they wanted to be able to have access to all of your bank accounts if you have over $600, because the government needed to track where you were using your money to check against potential fraud. Right? So they wanted to check and see, oh, you're spending your money over here, and if it was a way of sheltering your money or hiding your money, they would be able to see that. Well, now they've changed it to over $10,000. So if you have over $10,000, they still want to, it hasn't passed by the way, but they still want to have access to your accounts if you have over $10,000 in your account. So if you're really, really wealthy and you have a whole bunch of money in a bank and they're going to track your money over $10,000, what are you going to do with your money?
Put it in multiple accounts.
Multiple banks under $10,000. I'll put 9,000 in that one, 9,000 in that one, 9,000 in that one, 9,000 in that one. I'll just separate my money all over the place.
That's a lot of work.
That's a lot of money. It's a lot of work. But that's why, again, if I'm a billionaire, I just hire my accountant to do it. Here's your $75,000 a year. Go do your thing. Take care of me. It's legal, right? And that was the thing in the article. I had to laugh. They're like, billionaires and their tax accountants and their lawyers are pretty smart. They know how to find those little holes. All right, we'll stop there. Pick up tomorrow.